Welcome to the final week of the Cuddle Monster Crochet Along Together. This week we're going to be putting it all together and we'll have a little monster in the end. Make sure you got a copy of this week's pattern to go along with the videos, and let's get started. To make our feet, we're going to use a strand of caribou held with simplicity in your main colors and the 4.0 millimeter hook, and you're going to chain 11. To make our feet, we're going to hold a strand of caribou with a strand of simplicity in your main colors, and using your 4.0 millimeter hook, you're going to chain 11. And now we're going to do a single crochet in the second chain from the hook in each chain. So our second chain is here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 should be your last one. Now we're not going to turn, we're going to keep going down the back side of the chain, and we're going to single crochet in each chain again. And this is going to put, really, it's going to put 2 single crochets in each chain on the ends. So we just did one here. As we turn to work down the back side, we're going to do another one in that last chain. So you can count 10 again. So 1, continuing on down the back, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you might have to pull. You can see me pulling on the caribou to get it out of the way to try to find that simplicity strand that's really going to help you find your last stitch. And 10. Now you can put a stitch marker in that last stitch. Keep track of the last stitch of your round, or if you like to mark your first, it's up to you. I like to mark my last. Now for rounds 2 through 8, you're just going to single crochet in each single crochet around. In round 9, you're going to single crochet 2 together around, and you're going to stuff lightly. And then in round 10, you're going to single crochet 2 together around and close it off. Once you've finished round 9 of your foot, it should look a little something like this, and there's just enough room to add a little bit of stuffing. Now, it's really important that you do not overstuff this piece, so you can even choose to skip stuffing it if you'd like, but I mean seriously, just a little bit of stuffing in there if you do choose to stuff it, because if this foot gets overstuffed, your monster will not be able to sit upright on its own. So just enough to give it a little bit of padding if you're going to add stuffing, but really barely any at all. And if you're concerned that you might not stuff it correctly, you can leave it completely unstuffed and it will be just fine. This caribou does provide enough substance to the piece that you don't have to stuff it if you don't want to. Then you'll continue to round 10 and close up your piece as we did the top of the body. When you're finishing up your foot, make sure you leave a long tail so we have something to sew it to the body with. We'll use the tail to sew this shut and then also to sew the foot to the body. Go ahead and make 2 feet, and once those are ready, we'll be able to make the claws. Once you've made both of your feet, it's time to make the claws for the feet. So you'll take one strand of your contrast color Simplicity with your 3.0 millimeter crochet hook, and we're going to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to do 4 double crochet in the 4th chain from our hook. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Pull that first chain tight if you can. Now we're going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 4 to join. So what I like to do is I flip it, I pull my tail up, and I roll that beginning chain 3 back, or chain 4 back around, and I look up from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, slip stitch in there. Then you're going to chain 1 and do a single crochet in each stitch around. Which puts you at 5 single crochet. And then you're going to slip stitch to the first single crochet to join. And that actually looks a little funny because we've got the next thing we see is our slip stitch, and the next thing after that is the chain 1. So you're going to skip those and go to your first single crochet. You're going to slip stitch into that. Skip your slip stitch and your chain 1 and slip stitch into your first single crochet. Then I always do an extra chain 1 before I cut my tail and pull through, and you're going to want to cut and leave a long tail so you can sew your feet claw onto your feet. And also your beginning tail, if you pulled it up through the center of your claw like I did, you can just trim it and push it down inside. You might want to use your hook to do that. Push it down inside of the claw. And you're going to want to make 6 of these. We need 3 for each foot. Once you've made your 6 claws for the feet, we need to sew them on. So I sewed mine. We look at our foot flat. This is the end, the back where our tail is still at. There's kind of that beginning chain right here. I sew the toes along the beginning chain, evenly spaced out the best I can. I like to start with the one in the middle. And you're gonna kind of flatten your claw and kind of whip stitch it to that beginning chain edge of your foot. And you can sew it as many times as you feel necessary to be secure. Once I think I've got mine in the way I like it, I like to give it a little tug to see how it reacts, and we're good to go. And these are squishy, but I like to kind of pinch mine to make them look extra pointy. And then you can just take your tail and sew it through the rest of your foot to secure that tail inside. And then you'll just repeat that for the rest of the claws, sewing one on each side of the middle, and then the same thing for the other foot. Once you've finished your feet, it's time to sew them to the body, and I'm going to show you real quick what it's going to look like when we're done. So the feet are sewn flat, whip stitched to the body so they can kind of bend, and this allows you to have a monster that sits upright instead of falling over or rolling around. And if you look, the seam's almost in a very wide angled V. This also helps the monster sit upright, and the feet are also slightly angled out. I'll show you on this one as well. So it's just like a flat seam that allows these feet to flop back and forth. kind of at an angle. In order to sew our feet on our monster in a way that will allow it to sit, we want to mimic that angled out V pattern. And we're going to sew one at a time. So the one edge of your foot, let's start with this one right here, the right foot, is going to be centered underneath the mouth. It's going to kind of be angled out. And you kind of want it closer to the front of the body so it's not underneath it. We don't want the monster sitting on top of the feet. You want the feet kind of angled out in front. So once you've found your perfect location, thread up your tail and just sew along the back bottom of the foot. And after a couple stitches, you can check to see your progress. So I've got a couple stitches in. I'm not completely attached, but you can see how that whip stitch allows you to move that foot back and forth. And I'm checking to see if I like the way that the foot's sitting. And I do. It's far enough back, but not too far forward. So I'm just going to continue stitching down back and forth until I feel like that foot's on there really secure. One thing to note when you're sewing the feet down is we're not really able to see which stitches we're going into like we were able to sewing some of the other pieces down. So just make sure that as you sew that you're grabbing both the body and the foot, and that your stitches aren't jumping, that they're kind of close to each other. If you jump your stitches far apart, you'll see this thread of simplicity kind of carried across your work, and we don't want that to happen. When you think you're done, give it a check, give it a tug. Make sure that it's sewed down completely and that you have a really good connection here, especially if you're going to give this to a little one to play with. And when you're happy with how it's attached, you can just sew right through the body like we've been doing to secure the tail. And then you'll just want to repeat the process with the other foot on the other side. Kind of angled out. Oops. After you've got your feet in place, it's time to make the hands. Now the hands are just smaller versions of the feet. So you'll make 2 smaller pieces here and 6 smaller claws. Sew the claws to the hands the same way that you did on the feet, and I'll show you how to attach the hands to the body. Once your hands are done, it's time to sew them to the body. So for placement, you just want to center them in between, along the side, in between the horn and the foot. And we're going to sew them down flat right here. And that will give us the impression that our Cuddle monster wants to cuddle. And you'll just sew it down the same way we did with the feet, with a nice whip stitch. After a couple stitches, you can check to see your progress. I'm still very open here down at the bottom, but that's not a surprise because I still have a little bit more to go. Once you're happy with the attachment of your arm, you can just run the rest of your tail through the body. And snip it. And then you'll just repeat that for the other side. And once you sew the other arm on, that's it. You have completed your little cuddle monster. And you can go ahead and give them all the cuddles. Alright, so now you should have a cute little cuddle monster all of your own. Make sure to give it lots of cuddles. Share with us in the Ravelry group, the Skacel Collection Ravelry group we've been chatting in. And then also, don't forget to check out CrochetAlongTogether.com for entries and for prizes for doing this crochet along with me. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys did too.